Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host. Did I have to remember that? Did I have to remember my own name? Filmmaker, storyteller, comic book creator. I like adding comic book creator to the resume. It's something I did years ago for Lion Forge and for other publishers, indie publishers. But now we got the Geekscape comics, and our first issue, Here Are the Prophecy, has been out, and I can call myself comic book creator again. And thank you guys so much. We're like at 1,000 copies in your hands, which is nuts, which is so crazy. And I love you guys so much for doing that. But yeah, Hear the Prophecy, and we're halfway through Hear the Prophecy number 2. I just saw the inks for page 17 of issue 2. So what is that? It's gonna be a 28-page issue. Spoilers, it's 2 pages more than you got in the first one. Guess how much more it's gonna cost? Nothing. It's still gonna be a $5 book. And then all the Kickstarter stuff. But we're at page 17, and I love this. I love the second issue more than I love the first, and I love the first. But comic book creator and occasional podcaster, I guess. I went on vacation with Heidi to South Carolina so that Ophelia, our daughter, could meet more of her my in-laws family over there. And I was like, okay, like let me line up some Geekscapes. And everybody was like, hey, I want to do Geekscape, but I'm going to do it later. I want to do this. And then I came back and I got an offer for an opportunity that I'm going to tell you guys about really quickly. I signed the contract on Monday, but it does involve Geekscape. It is super cool. But I'm not going to talk about it until both parties have mutually agreed upon how to promote each other. But it's going to be awesome. It's gonna be fun. We'll see how long it lasts. I have to not screw anything up, but I'm excited. We also have lots of Comic-Con stuff, so I had to like order merch for Comic-Con. I will hopefully see you guys on the 25th of July and the 26th and the 27th. All those dates in San Diego. I hope I see you guys. Comic-Con takes a lot to get together between Matt and I orchestrating everything. George, my partner here in Geekscape, putting everything together. Like it takes a lot to get down to San Diego, even though it's 2 hours south. Just putting transportation, making sure we have press there, our own press, the Geekscapists, that we have booth staff, that we have the panels, all the stuff. Like it is the most I don't know, it's the most work that we put towards Geekscape every year, at least on my end. Matt might put more work into the live streams. He does a lot on the YouTube channels. Like Matt puts a lot of work into Geekscape. But for me and all that stuff, Comic-Con's the most work. And so I came back from South Carolina. I was like, can't wait to Geekscape. And I didn't Geekscape for like 3 weeks. No Geekscape. And I'm so sorry. I hope you guys have enjoyed the past episodes in the feed. And you know what? Like I took you guys to like 2 straight conventions and gave you guys interviews. So like there's some great stuff in the feed recently. And we're going to do Comic-Con. And it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of great stuff coming out of Comic-Con across the network. So sorry about the last 3 weeks. This is all to say sorry about the last 3 weeks. We've been doing some great stuff. You just haven't seen it on the feed. But keep sharing the feed with people. Keep sharing the YouTube. I want to tell you guys about a brand new merch store that we started up. There's lots of stuff coming down the pipe. But right now, I got a Geekscape. And it feels so good to be back in front of the microphone, especially now because we're going to be talking about Ironheart, the kind of almost surprise Marvel series that we knew had been shooting since 2022, but not a lot of fanfare. There was a lot of fanfare for Thunderbolts, Captain America 4, of course, Fantastic Four, but like it seems like Marvel is like, hey, 3 episodes a week, 2 weeks, you get the 6 episodes in one cute shot, and then cool. Ironheart's out. We can move on. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. We got to watch this thing. And then you know how we do here on Geekscape. We got to talk about it. And I got Ian Kerner here to do it with me. So I've said a lot. Let's start the theme song. Let's come back. Let's get Ian on the mic. And let's get Geekscape. And it feels so good to be back, guys. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you're here. And I hope that if you're listening to this on your audio podcast feeds, that you share it with your friends or subscribe or whatever. But let's come back and let's talk Ironheart. All right, Geekscape is and now I'm back to start the show. We're going to be talking Ironheart, the new Disney Plus Marvel series. The character spun off, Riri Williams spun off out of Wakanda Forever. There's going to be spoilers. There are going to be a lot of spoilers in this episode, and I'll warn you again. But first, I want to get Ian here to talk with me because Ian, you've been okay? You've been doing good?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah, there's been like there's personal stuff. It's like there's a lot of stuff going on, Geekscapists, and so we, the fact that it's been 3 weeks without a Geekscape, I'm not, I tried. I wanted to do some Geekscapes. I got some Geekscape coming up next week for you guys, but
It doesn't
man,
sound like you tried that hard, but
we've really been going through it. Well, I mean, I had a lot of fun stuff going on. Like for me, it's like stressful because learning to be a dad. Ophelia's almost 1 year old.
Your life took priority over doing Geekscape.
My life took priority over doing Geekscape, but you know what? Like, I'd like to think that that Geekscape dovetails with my life a lot, and that's what I've tried. I've tried to design it to be like that, but yeah, every now and then it's like, oh, you got to step away from Geekscape to do this gig or meet with these people or do all this stuff. We'll see. Sure. Well, I mean, I'd love to integrate it more, but here we are. And Ian, like, we got Superman coming. We got all this stuff coming down the pipe. I hope you're at Comic-Con, even if you come down for like a little bit on the train or whatever. Like, yeah, I hope you can come down.
I don't have a hotel yet, but I mean, 3 weeks away. And also, I just found out I think I have to be in Florida the following Monday. So,
all right. Well, hopefully you come down on the preview night and chill on a Thursday or whatever, pal around.
I'll figure out something, I think. But yeah, it's just that, as you know, getting hotels is hard.
Yes. I mean, as an exhibitor, even when we do the hotel thing, sometimes they put us in a hotel that isn't, like last year, I don't know what the jumble is. It seems like there's a different algorithm or math every year that they use to give exhibitors their hotels. And I think it depends on whether or not the big two or the studios take giant blocks from the nearby hotels. But last year was a hard one. We did end up getting a good one, but I held out because they gave us something by the airport. And this year I was like, they're going to give us something by SeaWorld. and they put us in group 2. Usually I like to be in group 1 because it's close to the convention center, but they put us in group 2. But that being said, they put us in group 2, like 2 blocks from the train station. Okay. Which I really like. And Ophelia is going to be there. And I don't necessarily want Ophelia always in the midst of the whole jumble. I want Heidi, who's going to be watching her graciously while we're doing the booth, but I want her to have a choice of whether or not to bring her into the maelstrom of downtown.
A friend of mine has a hotel room right over there, and he might get a different room from another source. So if that works out, I'll probably end up with, it depends which one's better. He'll keep it that one, obviously. But so we'll see. And then I just got to figure out the timing of everything. So, but
I'm excited.
And then, so yeah. So, I'll figure, I always figure out something.
That is why you're here. And like, you're crafty. You have a large amount of knowledge. And I actually, before we start talking Ironheart, we got to talk about Jim Shooter, the legendary editor-in-chief that took over for Stan. And this guy, Jim Shooter, he recently passed away. Young. He was young, but he was also young when he got into comics. Like he sold his first story to DC at 13.
Yeah.
And then he became a writer for DC and came over as editor-in-chief for Marvel after Stan Lee.
And his first story, and then became a regular writer by 15.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. They didn't know how young he was.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then he ended up, he's the one that, basically took over for Stan in 78. And he killed Jean Grey. He killed Phoenix.
It was controversial. Did it cost John Byrne and Chris Claremont that gig? I mean, everything.
Claremont stayed on the book forever.
Right.
Yeah. Byrne left.
Byrne left, and Shooter gave him Fantastic Four, which is this run maybe second only to Stan and the King.
What's interesting is, and I know we on a separate thread when he died, we were talking about a little bit about what he did with Phoenix. What's interesting is that I've always been very interested in what the story would have been if they hadn't killed her. But at the same time, it's for me, I'm a little older than you. Uncanny X-Men 137 was the book, and it propelled the X-Men from a book that was liked to suddenly everyone was talking about the X-Men, wow, no one, because before then, and the joke has always been okay, and everyone comes back from the dead. That was really the first big death.
It wasn't the lead into the Bronze Age with the death of Gwen Stacy?
Gwen Stacy was an ancillary character that died.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Okay.
This was Marvel Girl from X-Men #1. She was a main member of the X-Men. Right?
Yeah.
That they killed.
Well, I mean, at the same time he's doing that, he's writing Avengers. He's got George Perez. He brings George Perez in. The people that he gave a start to, I mean, we're talking about just some of the greats. Dave Michelinie. Who else we got? We got Frank Miller. Frank Miller's Daredevil. The Thor run. Those are all legendary.
Talk about Frank Miller. Remember, Frank Miller was an artist that then they said, okay, we'll let you write it.
Well, he started giving these guys like John Byrne in the Fantastic Four, hey, you want to write? Now you're a writer. He also initiated the Residuals program that allowed people who created their comic, their characters, like Frank Miller creating, Elektra and Bullseye. He gave them ownership and a percentage. So, Ian, can you mute that ding that's coming from your email? He also gave, I think Rob Liefeld had that gig for about a month before Jim Shooter moved on. He created Secret War. We're going to get a Secret Wars movie, and he created Secret War out of the toy line. It was incredible. We don't have a black Spider-Man costume or Venom, but arguably without Jim Shooter making that Secret War deal and creating Secret War. So Jim Shooter gets credit for a lot of what we're going through as Marvel fans. And was Jim Shooter's era the last great era of Marvel? And it's hard to say, because it's really actually sad to say, because that ended in 87.
Yeah,
but
look, there was a lot of great things since then too. I'm not a big fan of it was the last great era. There've been great eras. Marvel's got a lot of great,
I like the Ultimate Universe that Quesada brought in. There's a lot of good stuff.
And by the way, so not to end there, he then left Marvel and created the Valiant universe from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a couple of things that you didn't mention. It was Jim Shooter who decided that the characters shouldn't age. If you look at Marvel Comics, that premiered in 61. With Timely, you had Captain America, Namor, and then obviously things kind of died off until the Silver Age hit, right?
Right.
Into the Silver Age, you had Marvel premiere with Fantastic Four #1. And the Marvel Comics basically had their characters aging in more or less real time, unlike DC initially. Okay, so for instance, when Spider-Man starts out, he's 15 years old. Okay, he's in high school, right? Now, by the way, one of the things they said early on is Iceman of the X-Men, Bobby, Human Torch, and Peter, Spider-Man, were the same age.
Yes, they're friends.
Friend, whatever.
Right.
But
they run into each other, which is the cool thing about Marvel. They interconnect.
Yeah. And then they established that, X-Men wise, Jean and Scott and Warren are a couple of years older, so they're 17 or 18. Beast Hank is a little older than that. Okay. Sue Storm, they don't quite say, but she's a few years older, and same thing, Reed and Ben are significantly older, because the creepy thing about, Reed and Sue, it didn't seem creepy back then, but there's a definitive age difference. I always felt like Ben was in World War II.
Yeah.
They're late 30s probably,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Well, Hank Pym was kind of creepy too.
Yes.
A couple of those older guys creeped on the younger assistants.
Pretty young.
Yeah.
And Hank Pym is this established scientist, been around a while. Exactly. But anyway, the point is talking about the aging, Fantastic Four. So the X-Men, clearly, you go from the original X-Men, by the time you get to the mid 70s, like the X-Men, Cyclops is clearly an adult,
Mhm.
right? They've aged. They're not kids anymore. You have the original X-Men, come in, and the new X-Men come in. Fine, like definitely time has gone by. The Fantastic Four, you actually see time goes by. Reed and Sue get engaged. They get married. She gets pregnant. She has Franklin. And all of that's happening in like less than 10 years. You see time going by, right? So Shooter in the late 70s, I think it was, said, all right, we have to stop them aging because they're aging out. Oh, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, I said, so he was 15 when he started. Within 2 years of comics, he graduates high school.
Yes, he's in college, yeah. It's almost like the speed of the Raimi movie, the first Raimi movie,
he goes through college. He's a grad student in the 70s. Okay? So again, like, it's not necessarily exactly real time, but they're aging. Yeah. He's clearly well into his 20s in the 1970s, so time is going by. And Shooter went, wait a second, we got to stop this. So then what was always interesting to me, he then kind of with Valiant went, all right, now I'm going to do the exact opposite. And Valiant Comics initially happened in real time.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally a month, in between issues, a month went by. I mean, maybe something picked up, but then they made the time go by. And I found that was a really fascinating, interesting thing, Obviously, he recognized, the issue of if you don't freeze time, you lose your status quo of where the characters are to tell stories, right? Like you kind of almost have to have it all planned out or they're going to age out. Yeah. But that was a very interesting thing. I loved Valiant books. I was a very, very big fan of Valiant.
Well, he was not a controversial figure, right? Like I feel like the firing of the primary artist on Secret War, like 2, in that whole thing, like he was gone shortly thereafter. But like you said with Valiant, he still has it. He still had it. And I never read a Defiant book, but that was the publishing, entity that he started after that. Yeah. But no, we don't have the modern Marvel without Jim Shooter. So that was big news. Let's pivot to Ironheart. This is where I'm going to tell the audience that we're going to talk Ironheart. It's going to have spoilers. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this live, know that we're going to get into the nitty-gritty on Ironheart. I had some stuff spoiled for me before the last 3 episodes aired, and I immediately just jumped on those 3 episodes. People were very thirsty. There's some big stuff that happened. But I think we got to talk Ironheart. And again, this is the spoiler warning if you're listening or watching. We're going to get really into it. The internet has been out of its mind spoiling this stuff. And then we're talking places like Entertainment Weekly do not care. They're using their main images to spoil stuff out of the last 3 episodes that haven't been out 48 hours.
Here's the thing. Let's go off on a little tangent with this.
Sure.
It's really unfortunate. Like, it's not just this. It's everything. I mean, I get into this with my wife a lot because I'm like, oh, I got to watch this. I'm like, it used to be, okay, if I didn't watch that night, I was screwed, right?
Yeah.
It's literally, then it became, okay, well, we're on the West Coast, so they were starting to release articles and headlines and everything right when it aired on the East Coast. It's now, oh, good, it dropped. Ironheart dropped at, 6
p.m. Yeah.
At 6 o'clock, they're going, okay, we can now release the article on the finale.
It was 7 o'clock. We were putting Ophelia to bed, and I just scanned the internet for political news. Like I use Threads and that stuff for like, let's see what the political news is. Let's see if this horrendous GOP bill has passed. Let's see what's going on. And there I just see an image in a headline from, again, a reputable source like Entertainment Weekly. And I'm just like, you thirsty, but or some of my friends who do they talk a lot on the internet about this stuff. It's just brutal.
Why don't you just stay off the internet? I'm like, because I work, I can't just stay off the internet. That's not a thing. And also, I don't have an expectation that something's going to pop up. So I'm not walking around in my life going like, oh, I mean, it's not just Ironheart is what I'm telling you. It's every show.
I told you.
Boom, they're dropping articles. It's like if there's some kind of twist in something that I have no idea there's going to be, suddenly it's on before I can watch it.
I know too much about the Superman movie. And it's not because of you or friends. I know
No,
too
I'm
much about the Superman movie because James Gunn and Warner Brothers keep putting stuff out about the Superman movie. Hey, I bought my ticket. What's that?
He's in the James Gunn movie.
Yeah.
The Superman he's in?
Well, I like James a lot, and
I do too.
I'm excited about Superman.
Everywhere.
But we gotta peel back on. We gotta find a more creative way to get people in seats without spoiling so much of the movie, without giving people so much of the movie. And I know that a lot of this stuff is in, you know, sometimes you'll go see the movie and like, oh, cool, they only showed stuff from the first 30 minutes, right? But now
I don't watch later trailers because later trailers start revealing the entire movie.
Oh, that last Fantastic Four trailer, the final Fantastic Four trailer, it's a lot. But also, how do you not go to a movie theater? How do you go to a movie theater and not sit through a trailer like that? You know, those trailers are going to be in front of the movies too. So show up to the movies 20 minutes late, like Christian Blatt does, and sit through the ads. But the trailers,
the movies when the movie is supposedly starting, then I get my popcorn. Yeah. So then by the time I'm done getting and I go to the bathroom. So then, you know, then I get in and
that's an hour later. Yeah. So I don't see Geekscape that's just, I mean, I think, yes, Hollywood's in trouble. They're having issues of getting people into theaters. I don't think 4DX and turning it into a Universal Studios ride is the solution. I think a lot of the solution has to do with keeping secrets and making sure that if you want the story, if you want to fully experience this thing with the surprise and drama that movies are supposed to promise, you have to keep the surprise and drama for the movie theater and don't spoil it on a YouTube ad that you're going to see on a phone. All that being said, I kind of love that Ironheart came out of nowhere. It felt like with no marketing, they really felt like they dropped them. It felt like they were squeezing it out before Fantastic Four.
Let's talk about that. You know, it's actually, I just want to, my macro view of the show is a lot better than I expected.
Well, Ian, I came out after watching that first episode and hadn't even finished it. And I was like,
I know you were bored.
I wasn't into it. I didn't understand why Riri was upset at her college, and then she turns around and gets upset that they kicked her out of the college. I was like, you didn't even like this college. Like, you're complaining about the college
specifics. I'm just saying the macro view was, and maybe it's because you would only watch the first. I did watch those first three.
By the end of the first episode, that dramatic twist, and then every subsequent episode gets better and better and better.
Yeah.
This show's great.
Yeah.
The show's great. The show is great. And I was blown away.
Surprising. It did a lot of things I did not expect at all.
When they start
stuff, I mean,
when they start going magic at the beginning of episode 3, and again, when they introduce Ezekiel Stane in episode 2, and they don't tell you it's Ezekiel Stane, and you learn it later. I mean, they did a great job.
Yeah,
this was paced out amazingly, and I wish the internet hadn't ruined it, because by the end of it, you get one of the biggest bads of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, that we've been waiting for years. And you know what's really unfortunate is, and this is still at 3 and 3. I actually really liked the 3 and 3 in this particular show because thematically it worked, but it still was a bit of a burn off. And they held the show back a long time. The show has been ready, I think, since at least a year. You know, and some of that's pacing, whatever, that's fine. Some of that is, you know, honestly, because of, you know, it's still going to be time for what's next, which we'll talk about later in the episode. I have a pretty good idea of where that's leading. But, you know, I feel like what's unfortunate is I've seen a lot of people saying that this Mephisto reveal, people were clamoring for. I mean, think about WandaVision. We were dying for Mephisto to show up. And it was all anyone was talking about. And now, there's talk about it, but people aren't watching these things. Marvel has lost its luster for a lot of missteps. And it's unfortunate because this isn't one of them.
This is definitely not one of them. And
yes, it deserves to be seen. It has the right elements to be a bigger show than outside of just Marvel. I mean, look, I'll put it like this, and I'm glad that I didn't know, so I don't know if everyone wanted.
We hadn't talked since I voiced my disappointment at the pacing of episode 1, and I thought I was trying to surprise you, but I loved this show.
Yeah.
And I will take all the mea culpas on that first episode, which Ian, like I got so bored that I was like, I don't understand this. I don't understand Riri. I didn't really understand her in Wakanda Forever that much either, other than
That's
like
what I was going to say to
like
you, that, I've gone into this show, many of the shows that were announced. As you know, I read a lot. I mean, I basically read all of Marvel. I basically read all of DC.
yeah.
Read a ton of indie books. But, so, and I always acknowledge, like, well, my favorites are obviously, there's things that appeal to me more than others. I still read things that don't. I mean, I have people go like, oh, reading Ms. Marvel, reading Ironheart, are you a teenage girl? I'm like, I'm not. I can still appreciate the books.
It's a good character, and she shows up in so many other issues.
But my point is that, so those aren't my favorite books, but I still like them. And so I felt going into, Ms. Marvel, I was like, that show's not really aimed at me, but I still enjoy it. But that was always the problem with Marvel making these shows versus, making movies that are for a wider audience versus a lot. What I loved about these shows, but from an economical standpoint, is tricky about them is, do they do well enough? They're not going to attract every single person that goes to the movie. They're not necessarily 4-quadrant. Now,
well, then you get the problem of the internet upchucking all over it because it's a black character and a female character
yelling
and
DEI, which, by the way,
bullshit.
Read comic books. But that's the point.
Yeah, read some comic books.
Marvel comics have always been this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, even back when there wasn't nearly enough representation and wasn't nearly enough speaking enough to to minority characters, Marvel tried. I mean, with Black Panther, for instance, with the Falcon, like, I mean, these characters have been around, and ultimately, I mean, certainly since attempts were made in the 60s and 70s, but definitively, more and more since the 80s and 90s, you have these characters, and and they're not DEI. War Machine's not DEI. I mean, and we can go on and on, but you see my point. So I mean, obviously, you and I are politically more or less aligned, and that stuff drives me crazy. And to have fans of these franchises saying that stuff, having those attitudes, it's frustrating.
How do you miss it? And how do you miss the lessons that they've put on you? Ian, let me tell you one thing that I think Riri Williams was missing in Wakanda Forever, and let me tell you what I think she was missing in the first 20 minutes of this series. And it's something that I think has been missing in the last phase or two of Marvel that I thought about when I walked out of Cap 4, and then I realized it when I walked out of Thunderbolts and loved Thunderbolts. And something I've wanted to say on Geekscape for a while. I think one thing that the heroes have been missing is sacrifice. And when you see Tony has to sacrifice this life that he loves to learn this lesson when he sees these missiles he's created in this being used, in the wrong ways. Not that you can use missiles in the right way, but Thor has to give up this hubris. Cap literally sacrifices himself in a plane. Like, these characters sacrifice friendships, they sacrifice their futures, they sacrifice their status quo. And then when you get to something like the Eternals, like, what is it that the Eternals sacrificed? What is it in Thor 4 that Thor himself had to sacrifice? Did he sacrifice Jane, or did Jane make the decision for him? Like, these characters that their names are on the titles of the movie, for like Wakanda Forever being one of them. When you introduce Riri is being used as a tool between the Wakandans and Tulikans for her ability to make technology. What did Riri sacrifice? And then also, like, what did Shuri really sacrifice when the movie didn't click? But now, but Riri's origin is tied into what you got in the last 20 minutes of episode 1 with her friend and her stepfather being killed. And that is such a necessary moment for Riri Williams, that when it got to that moment and you see the emotional shift and you start understanding Riri Williams, I'm like, hey, this came in 3 hours into having this character on screen, and we need it. I think the Marvels is another example like that. We don't see sacrifices on those characters.
Here's the thing about this that I found fascinating. It makes it a really good show. Surprising show is Riri Williams in the MCU a hero?
Is she? That's what's so cool about it is the ambiguity of this. She doesn't want to be. She has.
What do you mean ambiguity? What? Show me one thing in that show that she does is heroic. She's not a superhero.
At one point, Ian, she does. She has to make a decision to stop. To protect her family. She does have to make a decision to stop the Hood.
Superhero. She is not a hero. She actually, what we see with this character, and it bothered me in Wakanda Forever. She's a selfish, entitled brat.
Yes.
Okay. Let's be clear. I like the character. I love the show. Riri's not a hero. So the ending, as it happens, and you're watching it, and I kind of had it spoiled for me a while.
Oh no, that I did not have spoiled. Yeah.
But I had it spoiled for me like 6 months ago. But a part of me was hoping, are they really going to do that? And as I'm watching the show, I'm like, you know what? They're doing it. They set it up the whole show.
Yeah.
The entire show.
She makes a lot of the wrong decisions.
She makes selfish decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Not because she's a bad person, which is what's really interesting. She isn't a bad person. She's not a supervillain, but Zeke calls it out. He talks right away. She's selfish. She screws him over. She just takes what she wants. She keeps making these bad decisions. And by the way, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying she's a villain. She's a young person.
Yeah, she's not a villain. I think
she's stumbling, and I mean, and life's hard, and not having money, but having genius and all that. It's hard. She makes.
Speak for yourself.
What would Tony Stark, be if he didn't have, the money to begin with? I mean, this is real, and it's easily justified. And honestly, and I mean, going through my own stuff recently, when I get to that last episode, I went, I got the idea of that decision. Usually the Faustian bargain is presented as, kind of like a clear choice. And you have to be so selfish to make it, right? But this show does a good job of, I mean, look, the Hood's bargain was, all right, you're kind of being a piece of shit. But even him, you have a little sympathy for he was just thrown out. I felt like they could have done a little bit more on that backstory, but it was interesting.
Yeah, when his father admits that he threw him out and said, "Hey, I just didn't want you," you get it.
That totally different on the comics. Everything about the Hood was pretty right on from the comics, but that backstory was not.
Well, the only problem I really had with the Hood, because Anthony Ramos was amazing, was very low drama on the introduction of him. And the Hood is major, but when you first see him after his team has done that first job, he's just kind of hanging out, not very heavy. But then as that Hood builds to the point where when he fights Riri and he's freaking has sharp teeth and he's basically a demon fully possessed by this thing, I'm like, okay, that's the importance of the Hood.
That was
straight out of the comics.
Yeah, which was great. I mean,
I loved it.
They adapted him fantastically.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the change they made showed an overarching plan, for all the robberies. So that was kind of cool. I ultimately ended up liking it, but
I did as well.
That, understanding what that robbery was, in the flashback, but kind of unclear, how we end up there before that. But still, it was a bit.
I actually have a question. When you first see him and Manny Montana's character trying to get into the house and they fail, and then he goes on a run, and that's where he meets. They're trying to get into that secret safe, and his father actually says, "You're not getting into that safe." Whenever he comes back and forces him to take over the business. What's in the safe, Ian?
I don't know. Was it a MacGuffin? Was it about papers? Like supposedly it was like that was going to be the ownership. Like I know that's part of my point about the background being a little lacking.
Well, I don't have it. I mean, I like that this.
What's in the box?
I like that this season kind of seeded things like that, but I also like that it, like with Riri's choice at the end, like it seeded some stuff for the future. If Riri had done the heroic thing and not taken that Faustian choice and been like, I'm not taking that bargain. I'm now a hero. You could have closed the chapter on her as a leading character. She would have just been a supporting character in the Champions, or she would have gone forward as a ancillary character and all these things. But she now has her storyline has to go full redemption cure something. And I love that when magic kicked in episode 3 and
And I
they
have to
go
tell
it,
you,
I was like, cool, is that what this is? Because this is nuts.
So I knew quite a while ago that the show was going to be magic. The Hood was the initial bad guy, but ultimately was going to be Mephisto. And I even knew that Riri made the deal at the end. And it was one of those things. I mean, look, I had access to information, and I took it in this case because it was like, is this show ever going to come out?
Yeah, I want to know if in case it's scrapped.
It was just one of those things that, like, I had access to it because it had been in the can for a long time. So someone I knew told me, I was asked, if I want to know. I said, oh, screw it, just tell me, because it does inform what's coming.
Don't do that. And going forward, don't do that.
I know. But anyway,
like, is Hawkeye filming? Is Hawkeye season 2 filming?
Not yet.
Okay, going forward, don't do that.
So what's the next thing is Vision.
Yes, Vision Quest.
Ostensibly, Billy's story continues into Vision, and we'll get Speed there. And then I'm hearing Champions is going to be a TV show, and that's where we'll pick up this Riri stuff.
That'd be cool. And Ian,
it makes sense. Billy dealing with that, right?
You had thrown out Billy would be. That's fantastic. Yeah, Billy would be absolutely one of the people who she could go to try and, hey, I know that I liked the character that we got. What was her name, Ian? Zelma. And Zelma's in the comics, right? Yeah, like she shows up at she's Doctor Strange's. She helps Doctor Strange.
Academy.
It's fantastic. I love that they use that character. The Blood Brothers, also created by Jim Starlin. Who are they in the series? I only saw them in the credits. The Blood Brothers are those two twins that are part of the Hood's
forces.
Okay.
They're aliens, but it's a cool nod.
Wait, run it back. They're aliens in the comics? Okay. Yeah. Are the aliens here, you think? Maybe.
No.
Okay. Zeke Stain. And I love Aldrich Killian. I think that actor is fantastic. I thought he was great as Solo. I think he's an amazing actor. And I liked him as the bumbling kind of, I don't want to be arrested, but I'm doing this black market stuff. When he's
transformed.
Dude, when he starts turning into Ezekiel Stain, and of course you remember
right out of the comics with the augments and all of it was fantastic.
He has some form of extremis by the end of it. He has all the augmentations, just like I'm thinking about the covers of those comics. Who did that run, Ian, of that Iron Man run? And that artwork looked like the artwork that you got in this one, in the series, in that Iron Man run from about 20 years ago. This is what it looked like.
It was great.
They nailed it. They nailed it.
And what I loved about that is, they killed Tony, they killed Obadiah, you kind of thought they weren't going to go to the well with those things anymore, there was, in my mind, there was so many characters like that they hadn't gotten to with Iron Man, and now, oh wait, they're still doing it, they're plumbing those depths, and I thought that was awesome. I did not see it coming.
And we're going to get Justin Hammer back, I heard, in a future series. Yeah. But did you not hear a rumor that Justin Hammer was going to appear in, I believe maybe Wonder Man or somewhere?
I did hear that rumor. By the way, and that's coming soon too. And that
Wonder Man's coming.
Good things about Wonder Man.
Yeah, you're the one who told me that Wonder Man supposedly was great. The other thing that happened was regarding Vision Quest. You shared a rumor from an unreputable source that said Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans will be happy with Vision Quest. I then saw it from a source say it again. And I'm like, ooh, because if there's one thing that Ian and I love, it's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'll tell you a second thing I loved that I was hoping for in this series. We saw her in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, but when I saw, I keep forgetting her name. I want to call her Zazie Beetz, but whenever you have the magic user, her name from the Strange Academy, I want to see Nico Minoru.
Oh,
I want to see the Runaways again.
But yeah, I mean, look, what would make us happy, right? The cavalry.
This series made me ecstatic. I loved it.
I mean, the bottom line is that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was absolutely part of the MCU, and then it diverged in season 7. But everything before then connected. even down to where did the helicarrier come from in Age of Ultron? You know, like it's literally set up in Agents of Shield for that helicarrier to show up. You know, like it's like all kinds of things that they did that were behind the scenes stuff. So it's so easy to do that, but throw an actor in, you know, just give us one of those characters, you know.
Well, we have Zelma. I mean, of Champions, Zelma seems like I was like, oh, cool. They're adding Zelma to this kind of young. She could be one of the magic users with Billy, and they can add her to the roster. But then there's a tag, and the tag is that the Hood comes back, and Parker recruits Zelma to kind of expand his magic. He hasn't had enough.
Well, he's lost his hood, so that was surprising to me. I figured he was done, so that was interesting.
Anthony Ramos is so great, though. He's so good. Yeah, he's so great, which is why I wanted him. I wanted a little bit of a dramatic entrance when we first saw that character, but he built so great over the series that maybe, Jonathan, you don't want that.
And I have to say, in terms of the Champions, they've done a really good job of seeding a lot of those characters, you know, in different things.
America Chavez, we still have her, and obviously this leads to some form of, with the Dormammu talk, we still have that Doctor Strange 3 storyline with the incursions.
Yeah. I'm wondering.
Don't know if we get that.
What's that?
Is that just going to be threaded into some form of Secret War? Or
I think so. Unfortunately, I thought that we would get, you know, some of that before, but I think, you know, because you would have expected. I mean, Charlize Theron is clear, you know, but it seems like, I mean, obviously the incursions, that's what the next two Avengers movies are. So but I don't think that's a separate Doctor Strange.
You think that maybe Doomsday starts with Doctor Strange and Clea on an incursion adventure?
I think it'll be part of it. I'm not sure it starts with it, but I think the Doomsday, that the whole movie is incursions. That's what it is.
Right.
That movie is, we're going to see a bunch of different worlds, and we're going to see incursions. You know, initially, this is all speculation. I've not heard a word. I think I've said this elsewhere.
Yeah, spoil yourself, Ian. Don't spoil us.
Yeah. No, I just want to say,
because I didn't see the Mephisto thing. I knew the Mephisto thing back in 2022, and it was kind of rumored, but they'd seen it.
Thing, like, well, he must be Mephisto.
I was like, yeah, I described it as the Lost, They're All Dead in season 1 of casting, but it wasn't until 7:00 Tuesday night, an hour after the episodes hit, that people are like, "Oh, Sacha Baron Cohen's Mephisto." I was like, "You thirsty? Got to get the hits, bastards! Like, stop. If you have a podcast, I know where to find it. You don't have to put this in your freaking stories on Instagram. Like, stop this, dude. Sure. Mute, unfollow."
So here's the thing. So Fantastic Four, I think, you know, I've just thought about it a lot. Obviously, we know from the end of Thunderbolts they're coming. You know, we've seen in trailers, unfortunately, it was seeming like, you know, planet getting destroyed, whatever else. Look, a planet being destroyed could be a flashback to Galactus eating another planet. But, you know, my gut, we've been here so many times since these movies started, talked about interconnectedness, everything else. And the lesson I've really learned is they really don't want to make one movie overly dependent on other movies. They want people to be able to just enjoy the experience as much as possible. The connective tissue is usually in the end credits. Mm-hmm. My feeling is they will beat Galactus before the credits. And then we will see in the end credits another piece, just like Thunderbolts, that's actually a quick little scene from Doomsday. Mm-hmm. That end credits scene in Thunderbolts was actually a part of Doomsday.
Yeah, we can all.
Same thing will happen. We'll see some kind of implication of them losing their planet or something. But that's going to be an incursion that makes them lose their planet, lose their universe, not their fight with Galactus.
Okay.
That's what I think. Because that makes sense. That brings them into the bigger conflict, right? You know, so yeah, and stopping the whole major thing. And ultimately stopping it, I have to think that the ultimate thing is going to be, the Secret War is going to be a battle world with aspects of all the different planets. And again, that makes sense. If the first movie is all the planets and them dying or getting destroyed and all that, and the second movie is, oh, you thought they were destroyed, but there's pockets of them on another planet and battle world, well, that's both Hickman's story.
Yep.
You know, we know they're going to change stuff. So it's not going to be exactly what we expected, but it's going to be something similar.
Do they need Molecule Man?
Idea.
Because Molecule Man was a major part of both Secret Wars versions.
They haven't done him, so probably. Right. I think the original idea was that it would have been Kang, and Doom would have shown up at the end of Kang Dynasty and taken power. And instead, because of all the controversy with Jonathan Majors, they're just pushing Doom. They pushed the story. They did basically the same story, but Doom starting off earlier in the movie.
Why not? They probably were down the road 2 years with all the previs and the special effects.
Yeah. And some of that is why it got pushed.
Mm-hmm.
But still, that's what I think. I've been worried to have a Doom-centric movie without having Doom first. I really, really hope we get some aspect of Doom in Fantastic Four, but we might not. Or I think at the very least, we will get him, fully see Doom in that end credit sequence that will be from Doomsday.
Is he or Latveria? I mean, Latveria has been referenced in the MCU before. Is Doom referenced in Fantastic Four? The body of the movie is Doom.
You have to remember that he could easily just be, from a different universe. He likely is. Whether he's from the same universe as this Fantastic Four or not remains to be seen.
But he needs a history with Reed Richards.
Well, that's the thing that would upset me if they didn't have that.
They need a history with Reed Richards.
That will very much upset me if they don't have that.
Even if it's the John Krasinski Reed Richards.
Yeah, I don't care.
It's like, can you imagine he shows up from the Multiverse of Madness universe, and they'd say that's the Doom, and he's like, the Wanda did what I wanted to do.
Well,
I'm pissed.
That universe, but it'd be from a different one. It doesn't matter.
Right, right.
But the thing is, after Secret War, it will all have been the same universe. So so maybe they'll wait for that.
When do we get the Inhumans?
Well, we got the Inhumans already.
I know, but when do we get them clean slate? When do we get the Vin Diesel Inhumans?
I mean, look,
I'm messing with you, but again, like after Secret War, is there a chance to get an Eternals and an Inhumans?
Black Bolt in Multiverse Madness was perfect.
He was fantastic. We don't. We need more. You hear us? We need more. And Ian, like some of these redos, some of the cleanups, quote unquote, like some people love that stuff, but some of the course corrections can all happen after Secret Wars. You can have a course corrected Eternals. Anything you want. Okay. Yeah. I'd love to see the Eternals. When do we see Mephisto again? Because now you have these major things happening in Doomsday. You've got Loki, at the center of the multiverse. You've got Doom trying to rewrite it. What's that?
It probably takes a minute. I don't think it's in Vision Quest. Could be, but I don't think so. I don't know. As I said, I think Riri's story will continue in Champions. I haven't heard anything about it filming yet. Obviously, there's a plan. And I would imagine, to the extent that dealing with this deal she made and maybe getting her out of it becomes a fight with Mephisto, that's where we see him. Listen, my concern going into this show right away was, mixing her in with the magic stuff. I don't always love when non-magic characters into the magic stuff.
Otherwise, it's just Iron Man, and that's what I loved about it, was that, like, if she's just going to fight Zeke Stain, then I'm like, okay, it's tech versus tech, and she just has to out-tech him. No, you have to go around him. You have to figure this out, and I thought the Zelma stuff, the episode 2 is great because of Zeke Stain, and, like, I was getting Riri and her friend, because the stuff with Natalie was awesome. It was so beautiful and so great. And then you added the magic in episode 3, and I was like, bring me next week right now. I want to see next week right now. Let's go.
So what they did with the magic on the suit, the current Iron Man comic has him with that because he's fighting Dr. Doom, basically. And that's the thing. It sets up Dr. Doom.
Mm-hmm.
This directly is introducing us to this idea of technological armor with mystical aspects. That's Dr. Doom, right?
And I love that it just wasn't an Iron Man show with Riri in it. The magic stuff really, really, really was some of my favorite stuff. It was badass.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And it followed and flowed perfectly from both the Doctor Strange stuff and both WandaVision and Agatha All Along.
Yeah, Zelma, and I did recognize Zelma from both Doctor Strange and Strange Academy. I just keep wanting to call her Thelma because she looks like Thelma from Scooby Doo, or she look, it's like that stuff really kicked it up for me, and it just felt like every episode, Thelma, yeah, it just felt like Thelma. It just felt like every episode had a brand new facet to it, and then you get Sacha Baron Cohen, which you'd heard the casting, all that stuff, and then he was just perfect. They couldn't have.
Michael Madsen died.
No, that's too bad. That's sad. I'm sorry for that late breaking.
Sorry, we're on this.
Oh, that's too bad, man. That's too bad. Are you doing the dance right now? From I mean, right now, like you said, Michael Madsen, I just immediately think of Reservoir Dogs, in that dance. Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad. Because Penn had died as well, and that's too bad. Thanks for that news, but that's really sad and tragic. Where do we see Mephisto again? You said that. Where do we see Ezekiel Stane again? Which was so great. I love that actor so much.
But I loved him. I mean, great character.
Love that actor.
You know what I liked about him is, look, in the comics, it's interesting. He's actually only when he's really taken over. There was this moment when he first attacks Riri, and he seems like this Zeke Stane from the comics, and maniacal. But I actually really like that. That's not who he is.
No, Alden Ehrenreich. I keep messing up his name, but it's Alden Ehrenreich.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matt Fraction put him in his run. That's the one I'm referring to as the Matt Fraction run. But Barry Kitson is the artist, and when you see it, you're like, yeah, that's what Ezekiel Stane looked like in that Matt Fraction run. And once he has the nodes and all the additions given to him by the Hood, it was perfect. Ian, I don't have a lot of detriments to this series. Honestly, I wish I got Riri in her backstory more in Wakanda Forever. There's a lot in Wakanda Forever I wish I had gotten, especially with that almost 2.5 hour running time. I wish there was more in it.
Why is Riri in this movie other than because they just want to sound it in,
Yeah.
But fine.
It felt a little Iron Man 2, her inclusion, but
that movie, as we know, meandered a lot. I felt like you were talking about it being sacrifice. I mean, to me, it's whatever character arc. And I thought it was odd that movie didn't find its arc until right at the end.
Right at the end.
Had, Shuri have an arc, and it was 20 minutes long towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And the movie didn't start to an hour and a half into the movie, right?
I would have, and I've told you guys, I've told Geekscape this many times over, my dream ending for that movie was Shuri, dissenting from the path her mother led at the UN, and instead of having Namor say, I'm going to be back in a week, which just seems weird, I wanted him to immediately I wanted him to crush Wakanda, kill the queen, and then immediately be like, now for the surface world, and point at the UN. And you had to have a scene at the end at the UN where Namor is Atlantis attacking on the back of Giganto or something. And Shuri has to be like, okay, unlike my mother, I'm going to get involved with the surface dwellers, and I have to save them. And I thought that would have been the ending right there. And it would have been freaking Atlantis attacks at the end of Wakanda Forever with the Wakandans protecting their historic enemy.
Where's Namor?
And where's Namor? I say Namor. But yeah, where's Namor? Where's he been? There's some controversial stories about that actor, but I don't want to give them too much here. But yeah, let's see. I mean, I do want to see Namor again. I want to see that version of Namor again because in the same way, I didn't think that Riri got her just deserves in Wakanda Forever. I'm not sure. I thought Namor did either, and I want every character. I think from Eternals to the Inhumans to all these things. I think there's really great stuff coming if you can just crack the codes on them. And this Ironheart was absolutely that for Riri, and then something. God, what a good series, man! What a good series. I was eating my words every moment I'm watching this. I was like, you're gonna be right with Ian on that episode. eaten your words for what you said about the opening of the series, dude. Like
I was ready to argue with you.
This is badass. You really you thought I was going to show up and be like, yeah, boring, stupid, chuck it on the heap.
That's what you were throwing out there.
Oh, I was so the first 30, 40 minutes of this show, I was like, when's this going to click? When's this going to click? When's this going to click?
The first episode was a little slow, but I stayed with it. It was like, I'm going to be really good. And it got greater and greater.
It's just the difference between Ian and I. Like, I'm asleep by 10. Ian will rocket all 3 episodes as soon as they hit. And I will usually go 1 and then 2.
Well, I usually can't in the evening, so I try to start, but then I'll stay up. But once, like it doesn't matter. Like I'll stay up to 1 or 2 when I'm watching. But
really, the deciding factor for me is
because as we know, otherwise shit gets spoiled.
Shit gets spoiled. But for me, the insomnia has something to deal with it. So I'll do the first episode, and then insomnia maybe that night late in the morning, like 4 a.m. I'll watch the second. If not, I'll watch second and third the next day. And Ian, thanks for being on this with me. I was so excited to talk to you about this show when I was finishing it. I was like, oh yeah. I mean, there's so much here, and it's such a great series. And huge congrats to Shanaka Haj, who was a showrunner on it, and it was so good, and I want to see more. And we also have the animated Wakanda series too, which looks beautiful. So it's a good time to be a geek, still Geekscapists.
Yeah, hopefully people just watch these things,
Yeah, instead of jumping on the freaking Rotten Tomatoes and turning into assholes, just watch the damn thing. Lots of great news coming, Geekscapists. Excited to bring you along for all the rides. The big one for us coming up in less than a month is going to be Comic-Con. You guys are going to be strapped in for that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. Ian, I really hope you're there. Regardless, we're going to be right back here probably that following Monday to talk Fantastic Four. You have to do the song. You have to do the Fantastic Four singing whenever you talk about it. But
we'll have to figure that out because
we'll have to figure it out. It might be Tuesday. I may have to watch it the Monday after I get back from Comic-Con. It's going to be a thing.
And obviously I said I might have to go to town, so we'll talk about it.
Oh, right. Well, bring your laptop, buddy. Bring your laptop. Bring your laptop, and we'll figure out how to do that, because I ain't Fantastic Four without you, but the Geekscapists want those flapjacks as soon as they get off the griddle. Does that work?
Maybe you should bring your laptop down to San Diego and we'll have to do it one night after the convention.
But when am I going to see the film? I'm running the booth until 7.
I don't know.
And then I've got the child in the hotel room with me.
Yeah.
It's not Fantastic Four will not be happening in San Diego probably, unless I find a midnight screening. And Heidi's like, where are you going? Oh, I'm just gonna go out for a bit. And then I come back at 2 a.m. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I saw Fantastic Four without you. We've been watching these movies now while she's in daycare, because why not? We already pay for the babysitting called daycare. We go down there during the day and go see a movie. Peace, brother. Thanks for doing this with me.
Sure.
All right. Geekscapists, we'll be here next week, and share this with your friends. Okay. There's so much more coming. So hang with us, subscribe, and all that. Leave us those nice reviews. And peace. Okay.